So excited about this last session. It's the last session before alcohol. To be honest, I was a little bummed when our events team didn't give me the nod to lead our late night digital show. Finally know how David Letterman felt when NBC went with Leno over him, but I'll get over it. That said, this is going to be a fun one because with Anthony Juliano in late night, you really never know what you're going to get. I literally don't know what we're going to get because when we've done this before, I've already snuck out for drinks. For those who don't know Anthony, or AJ as many call him, he's Landmark CTO, and according to him, our resident genius. He defines what Landmark does best, though. He's befriended and become a trusted advisor to CIOs and CTOs across the Fortune 500 and paved a seamless path to partnership for his clients. He's the bridge. He's the man, and he's the host of Landmark's late night digital show, Mr. Anthony Juliano.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you for actually staying around. I know there are better and other things to do at this time in a day. However, since Scott is out of material, this will not go that far. Trust me, we'll be all right. For those who don't know, we actually have a bit of a break in terms of kind of traditional content, the way we do things at these events. We've seen so many times over panels and fireside chats and presentations, and so we decided to kind of have this format as a way to do something at the end of the day that's a little bit more high energy. First things first, I'm going to suggest everyone loosen or take off their tie. At this point, I realized actually that many of you are not wearing a tie because this is not really like a formal event, so I came to a media event with a tie. Should never have done that. The second thing, I actually have a bit of an announcement and a little bit of audience participation. So today is actually my mother's 77th birthday, right? So we're all going to say hi to my mom really quickly. Wait, hang on. So on the count of three, everybody, we're going to do happy birthday, Mom. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Perfect. She's going to love that. Okay. So what we're going to have now, a couple of guests are going to come up. We're going to talk. We're going to sit. We're going to relax. We're going to drink water in the mug. Sort of water. Might be vodka, don't worry. The format really is to talk a little bit about things that we've been seeing over the course of the day. And I'll actually say, there's an interesting thought process I've been having lately. There's something I think going on really interesting in the industry. If you look back, at kind of the philosophical underpinnings of epics and eras to date, we've really come to a point in time where we're at a digital renaissance. So it's funny, if you think about the word renaissance, it's actually the French word for rebirth. And I think, the kind of mark of it was this cultural bridge between the Middle Ages, where things were brutish and terrible, and this wonderful kind of, enlightened modern world. And so there's an interesting bridge happening now, really around digital. I think even if you go a little bit deeper, many people actually would refer to and talk about, the Renaissance as this era of pessimism and nostalgia and desire for things of old. And that, to me, perfectly characterizes the reason I still use a BlackBerry, the reason that, 90s shows come on, or you hear things of sitcoms from yesteryear and you really want to do that. And so, I think that there's an interesting topic that we can kind of get involved in, which is really around this digital renaissance concept. And actually, it'll probably be the launching pad for another event for us in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, I'd like to call up a few special guests, and we're going to get to know each other. So, in no particular order, let's welcome Adam Berger to the stage. Adam, thank you so much. Excellent. So, Adam, I think, obviously, Facebook is a very important company. The first question, should I get rid of my MySpace account?
I think so.
Yeah, about time.
Yeah, does it exist?
Yeah, I think it still exists.
If you're a band.
Didn't you guys buy them at some point?
You didn't bring your guitar with you, did you?
No, it's in the back, but we can jam later if you want. I guess maybe if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce us. What are you doing now? And actually, the real question on my mind: how did you get involved in this? Why are you doing what you do?
Sure. So I lead our global strategy team on the Creative Shop Studio. The Creative Shop is our team where we work with clients to build ideas, really at the intersection of things that are going to create value for brands, but also are going to create a lot of enjoyment, excitement, engagement, and value for people. I've been on the team for about 5 years now. We've grown quite substantially and had an opportunity to work on some really amazing projects. The reason why I got into this and where I came from was from the client side. So before Facebook, I was on the client side, and I saw a lot of amazing opportunity, ways that brands can become storytellers and tell stories, and that's what got me into marketing and creativity in the first place. But I think there was this shift happening, this renaissance happening, and it probably started even more than 5 years ago, but I think at 5 years ago it was really starting to S-curve up, and that renaissance was digital. Right? It wasn't even mobile yet. It purely was digital.
Sure.
And I was looking at what I was doing and all the things that our brands were doing and saw an opportunity to take that to the nth degree. Sure. And probably one of the biggest changes was this idea of personalization and building for people. And the opportunity, and what excites me as a creative at Facebook, is the opportunity of having kind of people's real identity. And that, therefore, insights and targeting and real measurement, right, of focusing on people and building stories for people and things that people are going to want to enjoy. Because you're now inserting yourselves into someone's everyday life, right? You're checking your phone X number of times per day, and during those times you're checking your Facebook, a large percentage of those, obviously, or Instagram as well, Messenger, et cetera. And our ads are not interruptive, right? They're part of the experience. And so to tell stories in a way that are going to be competing with what your friend is posting or what your mom's posting or maybe a media brand that you follow, is writing something, to me is a really interesting and compelling opportunity.
Sure, I think there's a lot of that kind of personalization that happens, right? And it's kind of that custom ability. So even before all that, what was your first job? What was the first thing you got paid to do?
Yep. So I was 13, and I was really passionate about music, and I was a little bit of a gearhead. And so I would go to parties, and everyone would be like out on the dance floor playing and talking, and like the boys on one side and the girls on the other. And I would be standing next to the DJ booth, like completely lurking and really annoying the crap out of the DJ. Like, what's that? How does this work? So after being asked to leave a few times, not the party, just the DJ booth. I bought my own equipment and started DJing. So I
usually get asked to leave the party, so it's good.
So I launched a DJ company when I was 13 and did that for 10 years.
Wonderful. That's great. Well, so you were almost at that cusp of where MySpace is today. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. Let's go ahead and welcome our next guest. So joining us on the stage, we actually have Tom Goodwin. Please put your hands together. Adam, if you can scoot down to the stage. Tom,
hello there.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
So Tom, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Myself?
Yes.
Just
where are you from?
In any way, I'm English.
I could never have guessed.
I know, I come from a very old village. I come from a kind of a medieval village where everyone's house is so old that some of the roofs are made out of hay.
Nice.
The doors are quite short because people were shorter back then. I come from the middle of nowhere, and I always had a dream that one day I'd live in New York and I'd live at the top of a glass skyscraper. And
here we are.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Beautiful.
So I'm happy about it.
Am I completely off base? Am I full of absolute crap that there's a digital renaissance right now?
I think there totally is. I mean, I think we overestimate the degree to which we've already changed. I get quite angry about the state of the industry, which is why I come to things like this, because I think we talk a lot about change, and we think that somehow by adding in a few digital strategy people and by adding in digital as a column on a media plan, that somehow we're understanding it all. I actually think that the most powerful thing about technology is the behaviors that it changes, the expectations that it change. So whether it's Facebook Messenger becoming a new way to buy things, whether it's Snapchat being a new way to sort of think about the world. I think it's not just a renaissance. We need to do a kind of reimagination where we kind of forget decades of taking TV ads and sticking them on the internet. We take decades of taking brochures and sticking them online and thinking that we've made a website. And we just need to sort of stop with these kind of assumptions.
True or false, the internet is a fad?
I think our current use of it is a fad.
I think that's fair.
I genuinely think we'll look back on this moment in about 20 years and think, oh my God, do you remember when we used to do these things?
Remember when you actually used to talk to people? So you work for Zenith.
Yes.
What's your actual role now? What do you do?
So I'm brand new there. They've created a role for me. I'm basically charged with everything new, which is fortunate.
That's
'cause
broad.
what I care about. Yeah. So I lead a team of people, some of which are going to be doing new content initiatives. So whether it's kind of branded content or native content, but just making stuff that broadly is between brands and publications and consumers. And then the other half of my role is going to be innovation. So everything that's never really been done before. Whether it's kind of integrations with Alexa, whether it's tapping into APIs, whether it's buying context rather than channels, like everything new I'm going to try and do.
I have this extended theory that TVs are soon going to be smarter than us. So the smarter the TV gets, it's going to be like, you don't want to watch that. Here, I'll put this on for you instead.
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of I'm sounding kind of annoying now, but a lot of these things that we use, like we call them smartphones. I mean, they're nothing to do with a phone.
No, they're not a phone
And
at all.
TVs are soon going to become unbundled from our expectations of what a TV is. Like, there are just going to be lots of screens around us. You know, all media will be bought through algorithms and sort of programmatic devices.
Beamed into your head.
Yeah, and the TV will just become the context of sitting back and having a really big screen.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll ask you the same question. What was your first job? What did you actually get paid to do?
My very first job was as a paper boy, which is a very boring job, but I was about 12. But my more exciting job was about the age of 16. I worked for a local electrical retailer, so I kind of convinced people which washing machine to buy. And it was amazing because it made me realize quite how rational people are. You get people saying, I want a TV, but it can't be anything to do with Japanese people. And you'd have to try and explain that pretty much all TVs would probably have had a Japanese person touch them at some point. And you'd have to ask them why, and they wouldn't be able to tell you. And it just, we spend all of our time doing demographics.
I just feel that way.
Yeah, people are just crazy, irrational people, and it's good to meet real people and learn that stuff.
This takes me back to the panel that was on like data and predicting intent of consumers. Just give it up. It's not worth it. Well, good. So we have one more guest, actually a special surprise guest. Let's welcome up Nick Hayes.
Here, how you doing?
Nick, thank you so much.
Oh, no worries.
So you may notice in your program that originally it was going to be Michelle Horowitz, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for Ann, but playing Michelle tonight we have Nick. Nick, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am the Director of Advertising for Hotels.com. So basically, if you are watching television or you see something online that's mass communication related, I've touched it.
So if I wanted to buy a hotel, I go to hotels.com.
If you want to buy a hotel, no.
What does the average hotel run me these days?
It depends.
I think we can get enough people in the audience together to throw out some cash. We'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it depends on it. You can go to, I assume, Devon or Dorset.
Oxfordshire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be a couple $100,000.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. So you basically if I'm a TV station, I'm selling my spots, or you're advertising through the TV as well as through other means, I would imagine.
Yes,
yeah?
exactly.
What are the channels that you guys focus on the most, I guess?
The channel.
And when I say channel, I'm actually talking about omni-channel.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, and so it's Channel 7.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
No, it's
useful. Useful.
The channel, frankly, the media channel we spend the most dollars on, television. Straight up. Now, the reason for that is, and I can't believe I'm saying this in a media tech conference, is, TV still, and especially for our audience, and that's an important, we have a more mature audience, we reach scale in a day versus a week.
Sure.
So we drive, large volume traffic through television. Now, underpinning all of that is a whole bunch of other efforts in retargeting and in social and everything else that lives underneath all of that.
Got it.
But in terms of our resources and the spend, television from a mass communication, and then we have variable channels where it flows up and down.
I promise not to tell the people at Facebook that you're spending most of your money on TV.
Oh, they know that already. Yeah.
Out of your mouth. Well, good. So maybe I'll ask the same question of you. What was your first job? What did you actually get paid to do? And how did you end up here? I mean, it's certainly a passion. Do you just love hotels, or?
No. Well, yes.
Wrong answer, Nick.
Wrong answer. God, I wanted that job. No, I started on the ad agency world.
Okay.
So I started working.
Even that was your first paid job?
No.
Oh, okay.
My first job was all sorts, babies. Yeah, I did all sorts of odd jobs. But I can tell you one of my worst jobs
Please, by all means. Was it being a late night host at a media tech?
No, I was a bar back at a London pub that sat right across the street from the London Stock Exchange.
Ooh.
And so I was the bar back, and so it was my job to pick up all of the empty glasses as they went through the pub. And you'd be surprised at how much stockbrokers that are on the floor of the stock exchange can drink in 40 minutes.
I would not be surprised.
Ridiculous.
That's just lunchtime too. That's the best part.
Oh, yeah.
So I was actually in London last week, and I was floored. It was like 9 a.m. I was going out to get breakfast, and like people were there like solidly drinking just before work or during work. And I'm not talking about like just a pint to like take the edge off. Like literally, you see them lined up. So I feel for you.
It's all the way up to here.
Care to comment, Tom? How much? No, I'm kidding. So
It's true.
So I think it's interesting, right? You guys all have very different backgrounds, but you've all arrived at the same place here today. What do you see as being kind of the next big thing in the industry around your particular job? And I guess taking a step back, when I think of the digital renaissance, we're moving to a point in time where machines will take over the world, right? I mean, we're almost at that point, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. I think the bigger challenge ends up being, right, as a lot of jobs continue to get automated, right? Advertising is programmatic now. And if you look at even innovation to a certain extent, now we have AI that can cut together creative segments automatically. I imagine the algorithms that go into Facebook at some point will create other algorithms that make everything happen. So as you guys see that kind of transition, and as we go through this digital renaissance, tell me what it is that's on your mind as a threat and an opportunity. What's that next big thing, and how are you going to deal with it? Adam, if you want to jump in first.
Sure. The next big thing is probably the thing that we're spending most of our time on today that a lot of people haven't begun doing. And it may seem like a cop-out to say, but it's totally true. It's mobile. Like, mobile is still such a underrepresentation of the overall media landscape, advertising landscape, communication landscape. And we've been talking about this mobile revolution for a long time. And the truth is, from a consumer standpoint, it's here, right? All the consumer behavior is there. What the long-term impact of mobile is still completely unknown. I mean, to the point of like, we'll look back in 20 years of the internet and be like, how did we do that,
Yep.
right? But I think about mobile, and we could go one step deeper and even say mobile video. We're in 1951. Right, this is television 1951. We've run our first ad, but we're truly just figuring out what it's like. So there's so much to learn about consumer behavior, about path to purchase, about the role of brands in people's lives when you're in an always-on sort of environment. I mean, mobile's changed so many of the rules that I think we believed were rules, right? They probably actually never were. And that's probably I think the biggest change moving forward, and it definitely requires a little bit of a rewiring of how we all think and work. The biggest kind of challenge, it's for the most part it's organizational structures, right? Companies have been built to work and function a very specific way, whether it's therefore created silos, or whether it's something that just requires kind of a reworking of organizations. I mean, the speed at which a company needs to move is substantially faster. And probably, I'm guessing, I could be completely wrong, as we go down this chain, we can probably move the fastest, you guys can probably move the second fastest, and you guys can probably move the third fastest, right? But like, that needs to change. We need to, not specifically
Nick,
hotels.
Counterpoint.
Well, no, actually, it's actually a really good point with Adam saying is that I do think the organizational changes that need to happen to take full advantage of the media tech landscape are huge, because you're dealing with someone with a skill set in making television ads, who then has to go figure out how to think about SEM, who then has to go talk to consumer life cycles over there, and that is actually a skill set that is kind of few and far between, because right now you have very expert silos in each one of those areas, and so we need to create the bridges amongst those silos to create the connection points to hit all of the touch points you have through a consumer journey. So the inspiration all the way through the funnel to purchase, re-engagement, socialization, and evangelism.
Sure.
The mistake we keep on making, like every time something new comes along, like we sort of rent out a slightly more funky office, then put slightly more funky furniture in it, and then get younger people in it. So whether it's, whether it was interactive, like I was in the industry in like 2002, and we had like an interactive department, so we make them like a neon sign saying activate or something.
Don't forget the foosball table.
Yeah, foosball table, and then the younger people work there. So we had interactive, then we had, I can't remember the order, but then we had mobile, so we had a mobile team, then we had a social team. And then every time something new comes along, we kind of build on this extra silo, and it's complete nonsense. Soon there'll be like an AR team, and then there'll be a VR team, and then the clients, either we replicate the clients or they replicate us. But increasingly, like these things are not vertical silos, they cross all of them. If you're watching the NFL on Twitter on your phone, I don't know if that's a TV buy or a mobile buy or a social buy or a video buy. Like none of
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but we're not set up.
It matters
very,
at a political level because whose team is it?
exactly,
now,
we're not set up in a very
But
good
doesn't
way
matter,
to deal with questions like that. And then for things that don't even exist yet, which is kind of my job,
Right.
One of the best ads I think there is in the entire world right now is that if you go to Google Maps and you're trying to get somewhere, you can press the taxi button and it'll then come up with APIs for Lyft and Uber. I don't know what that is. Like that's not really an ad. Like it's not really sponsored content or an ad. But
Click through.
if you came up with that idea, I don't know like what part of the client do you speak to about that idea.
Sure.
And it's that sort of ambiguity and that kind of new world that I think is the biggest challenge for us all.
Well, and look, and I it almost sounds inappropriate for me to say this because I feel like people make the same mistake in terms of innovation, right? And you have it in your title, which is usually a bad sign. But, but I think the reality is innovation is everyone's job, right? And so I get to be the one who's sitting over here in the technology chair as CTO, and I spend my time talking with CIOs and CTOs, and Scott spends his time talking with CMOs and digital officers, and there's kind of this weird, now who's responsible for what moment, and a lot of the marketing and the digital guys go, dear Mr. CIO, it doesn't have a plug that you can plug into the wall, therefore it's no longer your business. CIO goes, whoa, it's information, like I'm in charge of the analytics side of this, we need to make this work, and it's kind of like there's all these silos that are happening, can't we all just get along? Like it's watching mommy and daddy fight sometimes.
And if you go back to consumers, right, like it's the old adage that like, it's January 1st, so we need a new campaign.
Yeah, right?
Did consumers all of a sudden like look at the calendar, right? Like if we go back to people, like people don't care. People don't think about, I've seen your TV ad during the NFL game, and then I saw this different out-of-home ad on my drive home,
That's right.
and then I saw this different thing in right? It's like, no, there's one brand, right? I just know hotels.com.
Yeah.
And it's pervasive across my life.
You know what's really funny? I was talking to the guy who's head of omnichannel for The Gap, and he was actually at our CIO summit in LA, and he had this great, really soundbite quote that I think is worthwhile. I'm sure I will butcher it entirely, but I'll say it anyway. At least I gave him credit, right? The idea of omnichannel is so quintessentially like the business speak for it. Omnichannel is the way that your consumer has been viewing you for the longest time, and you're just catching up to figure out what that is, right?
Absolutely.
And you've got these like, .com side and physical side and all these silos, but that's not how your consumer sees it. They see a brand, right?
Again, that explains the kind of bolt-on thing. I mean, there are stores that you can go to that boast about omnichannel, and the reason they boast about it is because they've got an iPad in the store. But if you go to that iPad and then try and pay at the till, the thing that you're buying from the iPad, they'll be like, no, you have to set up a new account and do it that way. And then if you want to get the product delivered and it doesn't fit, you can't take it back to the store. So they kind of boast about omnichannel because they're doing everything, whereas actually omnichannel is just being completely kind of agnostic. It's basically, there's no such thing as e-commerce or mobile commerce or commerce. It's just the act of buying stuff in the modern age. And sometimes you might be researching it on Google, then buying it from an ad in Facebook, and then trying it on, and then taking it back and getting store credit and buying it in real life. That's like the reality of how people behave. And we tend to arrange ourselves around the departments that make sense to us. And we should spend our entire life just thinking about people and just doing what's important to them.
And that's where, and this is where, as the brand guy, the brand becomes so important. I don't care which screen you're on. I really want mobile to have decent tracking so I can prove it to people. And frankly, if mobile can solve the tracking issues, you're going to unlock all sorts of interesting things. But until it's a black box right now, until that disappears, mobile in particular will be challenged. And that leads to the continuation of the silos. Now, if the brand is the most inherent, the important thing, we heard from Under Armour today, and I remember sitting there as the Hotels.com guy going, I really would love to understand how they're doing the ROI analysis on that. But the overarching concept is if you can go screen agnostic and you can track it all as much as you possibly can, so you can see the consumer journey through the process. And if you can get to that point, then we're starting to talk in a really interesting way.
Sure. So Adam, how long have you been at Facebook?
A little over 5 years.
A little over 5 years now. So obviously you've seen a lot of changes, I imagine, in the same 5 years. At an organizational structure level, have you seen these breaking down of silos and thinking more just about, what is it the user wants?
Yes, absolutely. It's happened across clients, across verticals, across industries. It probably just hasn't happened across the industry.
Sure.
Yet, right? And I think a lot of people recognize, a lot of CMOs I met with, like they recognize the challenges. It's how to solve those challenges is the biggest problem. And we could obviously make suggestions, but we're one of many people that you work with. Like it's really something that is core. I think the people who have done it best go back to the reason why their company exists. But if you go there, then it actually becomes very clear. And it doesn't always mean breaking everything and rebuilding it, right? It could mean staying the exact way you are, but actually just changing the underlying culture within. But it's certainly a conversation that comes up quite often.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you guys have your fair share of, ping pong tables and nice, cool neon lights, right? And so attracting that talent, and I think you guys are always heralded as like the line, right? I'll talk to the insurance guys in New York and they'll be like, well, we can't get the Facebook talent, we can't get the Google talent, right? And so I'd imagine that culture is kind of something that's constantly churning. I'm curious for you, Tom, and what's going on, obviously, in the innovation group and kind of trying to think about what's next. How do you guys attract that new talent?
I haven't found it too hard. I think, I entered the industry in about 2000, and that year, everyone was worried that management consultants were stealing all of the best people. And then recruiting in about 2008, everyone worried that the banks were stealing all the best people. And then now the classic line is that Google or Facebook is. I don't know if that's particularly true. I mean, I've got a really nice job title and I've got a really nice remit, and I'm pretty confident that I can get the people that I want.
And you're fairly new, right?
I'm fairly new.
So why did you join Zenith?
Because it's a bigger challenge. I think we spend tens of billions of dollars a year on clients like Verizon and Chase. And when you have access to significant companies that are prepared to invest in new things, then you have a much greater sort of seat at the table and you have much greater opportunities. It's also an agency that is kind of rooted in the idea of ROI, and that sounds quite boring because you'd imagine there'd be an inherent tension between someone like me going, let's do new stuff, and then people saying, well, what's the ROI? But I'm getting a bit fed up of kind of innovation that's just gimmicky. Like people are endlessly saying, but what can we do in AR, or what can we do in VR, or how do we deliver this by drone, or what's the iBeacon strategy, or what does Pokemon Go look like for this? And I'm kind of,
I hated that.
I'm getting really bored of that, because actually, this makes me sound like a way more boring person than I really am. But actually, innovation might be integrating Apple Pay within the Hotels.com booking flow, because quite frankly, I don't ever want to enter my personal details into a mobile app again.
100%.
It may be some amazing bit of software that just removes a step out of the buying process from a Facebook ad. It may be something that, mobiles are amazing, and the degree to which we've misunderstood what can be done is extraordinary. We've taken things from the past, and because the screen is smaller, we've worked around the sort of new constraints. Whereas actually, if we figure out that they're the most personal device we've ever known, they know what we're going to do later on that day, what the weather is, what the stock market's done. If you work around the possibilities, it's amazing. So I now feel like I have a better environment in which to ideate around the newly possible, rather than just to take the old things and make them smaller.
That's great. It's funny. I give a lot of these keynotes on things like innovation, and so part of my mantra is usually if you have to call it innovation, it's not, right? But I think the major one I always use is this. It's a quote from Mark Twain. The definition of a classic is a book that everyone wants to have read, but nobody wants to read, right? And I think innovation is the same thing. And so everyone wants to be innovative, but nobody wants to figure out how to innovate. Yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as turn the ketchup bottle upside down.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got the old ketchup bottle that's got the standard. It's the kind of the signature of the brand, and it collects all that goo at the top, and you dump it out, and it's like, ew, it's on my hot dog. I don't like that. And then somebody said, how do we fix that? And they went through this big process, and some guy had like a little valve that was like a 10-cent valve, and they said, well, why don't you just turn it upside down and leave it that way always, so that it doesn't just automatically come out? And all of a sudden it was like, yeah, that works, right? Yeah. In London, I was at the hotel and I had to get a Carlson group or whatever, and the most innovative thing the guy said to me is like, I have all your details, I'll just fill it out for you. I'm like, thanks. That is so much easier. Contrast that with the next hotel I was at, where the guy's like, here's a card, fill out your details, let me know your firstborn's name, and I was like, I don't want to deal with this right now. I guess
I'll interrupt you one second. I think Mark Pritchard said, we've fallen in love with technology and out of love with ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually core to all of this, whether it's innovation or not, is just like the importance of the idea and letting that lead versus focusing on the technology.
Absolutely.
I would say when you talk to me, and I didn't really answer your question very fairly about the struggle for talent in the industry, I actually find it easier now than I did maybe 5 years ago, because there's a whole generation of people that have grown up with no understanding of a non-digital world.
Sure.
And therefore, if you get people that are sort of young and have lived in that world, they haven't been sort of trained with years of GRPs and all that sort of crap. They've just grown up with mobiles being amazing, with VR being on the horizon, and it's actually a lot easier to work with sort of young people because you don't have to sort of unlearn all the stuff that they've been taught before.
I have all kinds of views on this concept of millennials, and I feel like that there's actually like two different versions of millennials. There's like the digital native millennials, and then there's like kind of I think part of my generation. I surmise some of your generation as well. And if I look at kind of that later stage, the older millennials, we're effectively the daywalkers of like the the Blade vampire community kind of thing, right? I mean, it's like we're the ones who actually didn't grow up with Facebook in front of us. So we see what the possibilities are from an ideas perspective, but there is that danger of falling in love with technology over the ideas. I got to imagine from an innovation perspective, I mean, obviously Hotels.com in and of itself has a kind of that very much air of innovation to start with. When it comes to the advertising side, brand is one of those things that it's gestalt, right? It's the sum of the parts should be way, or the whole should be way greater than just the sum of the parts, right? What are the things that you do internally to promote a culture of innovation around this, beyond kind of the day-to-day where you get stuck kind of in love with programmatic or whatever the channel of choice is of the day?
Well, to be honest, it's a matter of, the discussion is not, hey, this is really cool, this piece of technology is really cool. It is let's try to do something interesting that's new. What technology facilitates that? So we actually just, last year did a Facebook ad and did a Facebook campaign, which frankly had our spokesperson with a sign language person, and the person doing the sign language, and then we had sort of subtitles underneath. But what she was saying was different from what the subtitle said. What she was saying is, for anyone in the deaf community, if they understood it, was enter to win a contest, and that's not what the subtitle said at all. And so that was this idea that came up that we went, oh crap, that's a great idea. And it's not like that audience was huge for us, but it was a really cool idea that would generate a lot of noise for us.
Sure.
And so we got a very nice thing from Sheryl Sandberg about it as well. So, but it's one of these things where, it's the ideas at the core of it. And if you can facilitate, and then what technology do you use to facilitate the development and creation of that idea?
Sure.
And then how do you get it out into the world at scale?
I'm going to open up the audience for one question, if anybody has something poignant and relevant, and if not, just keep your hand down. Totally fine. But if not, then I'll ask a question, which will totally not be poignant or relevant. I guess maybe just thinking a little bit outside the box, and this is going to be the speed round, and also slightly taboo.
Oh no.
Oh no, he says. It's taboo.
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 The
How-
game or inappropriate?
Just taboo, not inappropriate. Well, later.
Is this being live streamed or recorded?
Don't worry about it. So the concept of privacy is something I think we're all a little bit concerned about. Obviously, everyone has a commitment to privacy, but I think at the same time, there's really kind of this theoretical balance. How much do you know about a person, and can you advertise about all of their things that are kind of really kind of at the core of their life? How invasive is a TV that listens to everything that happens in my living room? I feel like Facebook probably knows more about me than I know about me. How important do you think privacy is going to be to the consumer, kind of going forward? And we'll leave it at that because there's not much time.
I'll start. I think that in general, the consumer has shifted their mindset pretty radically towards they acknowledge the fact that they don't have privacy anymore. And because this is something we talk about quite a lot at the brand level, people have sort of abdicated their personal information and don't seem to be that worried about it, to be honest. I personally have some ethical challenges around it because but if I work around my own personal ethical challenges if I'm doing it at scale, I'm okay. But I think the consumer in general has abdicated their personal.
You don't want to be advertised to, the quintessential memoir of an advertiser.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's complicated, but a whole generation of people have grown up sharing their most intimate thoughts on Twitter and every location on Facebook, so it seems kind of ironic that they expect privacy. I think a lot of people won't even know what privacy is quite soon because it won't be a concept they've ever understood. I think as an industry we've done a terrible job of actually raising this debate. We've kind of shied away from having it, and if we really embraced what it meant, if we embraced the fact that if we shared more stuff and that we were in control of it and it was transparent what it was going to be used for, and there was a clear value exchange, then I would totally welcome it. I as an individual, I would share absolutely everything with everyone on the basis that I got amazing value from it.
Sure.
So, but we need to start the debate.
The economy,
rather than hiding.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important, right? Like, without privacy, you lose people's trust. And so it's something we take very, very seriously. I think what we've done, and exactly to your point, like transparency is key. One of the things that I love as a user of Facebook, but it's pretty awesome as an employee as well, is you can click on any ad and see, why am I seeing this? And if you don't like the reason why you're seeing that, you can change it out to that. No, I'm not interested in cars, or I don't travel.
Totally.
Whatever that may be. So giving people choice and transparency is key, but privacy is obviously extremely important.
Cool. Quick show of hands. Who here thinks that digital renaissance is a worthwhile topic to explore further? 5 of you. Great. Who here thinks that these guys did an amazing job being up here? And go ahead and put your hands together up top. Thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate it.